Elite Dangerous Odyssey Update 8 has been released, so I wanted to do a quick side-by-side performance comparison with the previous update, since the notes on this one do specifically mention some optimizations. Now, just quickly before I get into it, this is a very brief test where I ran through a couple of the tutorial missions on Update 7 and Update 8 to see if there was anything noticeable that stood out to me. It's a slightly abridged comparison due to some recording issues on Update 7. It didn't affect the performance as the problems that I had were on my separate recording PC, but it did mean I couldn't use all the footage, unfortunately. But the frame timings you'll see on the bottom of the screen on the FPS VR overlay will be accurate, so we can rely on those. Also, just for your reference, all the in-game settings, the resolution scaling and the Steam VR super sampling were identical in both of these recordings as well. So this is just a video to compare any noticeable changes between the two updates, and it's not intended as a guide for best performance or anything like that. But with that, let's take a look.
Immersed robot.
Okay, so I started out in the hangar on this tutorial mission on both Update 8 and Update 7, and you'll see as we look over on the right to Update 8 that the CPU frame timings do spike a lot more just in this initial area for some reason. So there's no noticeable performance improvement with Update 8 here, although perhaps slightly with the GPU frame timings if we take a look at those, but CPU is sort of counteracting that really with those spikes. Then once we get out into this main area in this station, performance does tend to settle down a little bit. Again, GPU frame timings vary slightly, hardly anything, but there is a slight improvement with Update 8 here. But then as we go through the mailbox out of the station, Update 8, the CPU is spiking again in that section. And then as we progress through this training mission, we're out in space and performance is very similar on both sides here, although I think you'll notice that as we go through these areas, as we go through these gates, you will get a little bit more inconsistency on the CPU frame timings on Update 7. So with that in mind, you do get a little bit more consistency in performance with Update 8 in this training mission area. And this is the thing with this test, I'm just going through a couple of sections just to see if there is any noticeable difference in these areas that I'm going through. Now, it could be the case that in certain areas of the game there will be some more significant improvements, but I'm just testing these two areas just to give you some idea of overall performance improvements. And there isn't too much here in this tutorial mission, but perhaps very slightly more consistency. And then once we get to the on-foot tutorial mission, I wanted to test this because settlements are of course a big problem in terms of hitting performance in Odyssey. Now this is still in VR, but I am playing this on that 2D flat window which is projected out in front of me in VR as we're used to with Elite Dangerous Odyssey. Now, it's always been a performance issue even when it's projected on that 2D screen, so you can see on both of these sides that performance really isn't that different in this area, not that I'm noticing anyway. Now this is the big thing, these are just the results of my tests and we'll wait and see what the wider community says about all of this, what results they get, but overall I can say that with this settlement area I'm not really getting any performance improvements overall. Now it's quite sporadic, it's the same on both sides here, you get some, it's just inconsistent. I think that's the takeaway on both of these. In some areas of the settlement you'll get quite reasonable performance, and then you can take a few steps and then turn around and all of a sudden you'll get some CPU frame spikes again, and it's all very dependent on which area of the settlement you're in, but it does seem to be more of an issue on the CPU side on my system than it is on the GPU side. So you can see my specs in the description to this video, but I am running an RTX 3080 GPU and a Ryzen 5 5600X CPU with 32GB of RAM. So just for your reference on the results I'm getting here, but it really doesn't matter too much on the specs overall, because this is of course running in exactly the same settings on exactly the same system, just so we can get some idea of performance improvements overall in Elite Dangerous. And from what I'm seeing, there really isn't a lot of improvements in the settlements area, or really even in the space areas of that first tutorial mission that I tried either. So that's pretty much it really. I was a little bit disappointed with the performance improvements in Update 8 in the sense that I didn't really see too many of them. There was perhaps a little bit more consistency in that first tutorial section once we got out and we were going through those gates, but the settlement area, which is really the point where performance is quite bad, especially in VR, and actually even on a flat screen, I still think settlements are performing quite badly there anyway, and there just still wasn't any sense of consistency when going around those. In some areas it was fine, and then in most areas it would fluctuate quite a lot. So it's still not really ready to say that the performance gains in this update have made too much of a difference to me. And I'll just repeat what I said earlier. I think it can vary depending on what section of the game that you're playing. Then we might see more performance improvements in different areas, I'm not sure, but this is just a very quick test for me to highlight two specific areas where there really wasn't anything that I noticed, and I've not noticed anything since I've been playing Update 8 which would suggest otherwise really. But these are just results from one system, so we'll wait and see what the wider community says about this update to see if other people are getting some more consistent performance with this latest update. It might have benefited some people while not so much others, so we'll wait and see what happens with that, but these are just my results that I'm sharing with you here. But that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. If you'd like to support the channel, then there are numerous ways to do so listed in the description, like heading over to the merch store and picking up an Immersed robot mug or any other item arbitrarily featuring the channel logo. As always, link is in the description to this video.